It was hard to believe that one day you could be in your office in Los Angeles and the next standing on a ridge on the Alaskan Peninsula, watching the sun come up. I think that every bowhunter dreams of going to Alaska. I know I did for a long, long time. I found that Alaska was everything I had hoped it would be. It's a spectacular country. The magnificent scenery and the animals on the rolling tundra flats were very exciting to see. It was really a bowhunter's paradise, and for me it was the beginning of a fabulous adventure.
Arriving in King Salmon, Alaska, Jim Dougherty was looking forward to meeting one of Alaska's best guides, Ed King. Ed is thoroughly familiar with the Alaskan Peninsula and had assured Jim his chances of getting a fair-sized moose and caribou were more than good. The next morning, they took off in Ed's Super Cub and flew another 150 miles west on the Alaskan Peninsula to the Michigan River. Along the way, Jim gave his camera a workout on the many moose, other animals, and the interesting scenery. The cabin on an island in the Michigan River had been flown in by Ed King, board by board, piece by piece. It isn't fancy, but is sound, dry, and warm. Landings are a bit hairy, but with Ed at the controls, nothing to worry about. The first day's hunt had Jim up early, checking over his equipment. The brilliant fluorescent crest and feathers give a tracer effect to Jim's arrows. They're easier to follow in flight, but appear gray to animals. One of the reasons for the Alaskan trip was to field test a new Ben Pearson design in a prototype takedown hunting bow. At Jim's draw length, this one weighs 60 pounds. Windy, overcast skies didn't dampen Jim's enthusiasm as he and Ed climbed into the Super Cub to fly up to the Cinder River area, about 40 miles away, to look for some caribou. The caribou were there all right, but Jim learned one thing right off. The flat country made it quite difficult to get closer than several hundred yards. They decided it would be best to get ahead of one of the migrating herds and try to head them off. By late afternoon and many tiring, unsuccessful stalks later, Jim and Ed were glassing 4 different herds when several good bull caribou came along. They moved out, planning on a 500-yard stalk to try and catch them when they came up on the cinder flats. By the time they got to the spot they wanted, the caribou were halfway across the flats and about 65 yards out. It was a long shot, but the only one Jim was going to get. It was a good hit. The caribou spooked at the shot and made a big circle around Jim and Ed, heading back into the tag alders. Following the blood trail, Jim picked them up again in the heavy cover and, without having to take another shot, found the bull down and out.
Well, he was my first caribou, and I was very proud of him. He wasn't a record-class animal, but I was very pleased. He was a dandy little bull, made a nice trophy. We could certainly use the meat in camp and take the rest of it to the Indian village down the river. Whenever we had a little bad weather, I picked up Ed's shotgun and went down the mouth of the river. I'm a confirmed waterfowl nut, I guess, and a chance for me to get an emperor goose or two to add to my collection of mounted birds was something that I really wanted to do. The goose shooting was fabulous. Emperor geese were a real fine eating bird. They certainly did a lot to change the menu in camp.
The next day, the weather broke, and Jim returned to the cinder flats. You're allowed 3 caribou in Alaska, but Jim felt he only needed one more chance to get the one he came for. They spotted 2 bulls, 200 to 300 yards out, and made a long circle approach. The bull spotted Jim about 75 yards out. The only thing he could do was duck down and run in for a quick shot at about 30 yards.
It's hard to believe that you could go that far and work that hard and then miss a caribou at 30 yards. I missed him beautifully. I was pretty upset with myself, but on the other hand, that's part of the game. You can't win them all.
About 4 hours later, they were in a pretty good position to head off a herd, and Jim again tried a running approach. It worked. It's about a 50-yard downhill shot. Jim picked out the largest bull. And the arrow caught him in the last rib, angling forward. He started stumbling, and Jim's pulse rate doubled as he watched him. Then, all of a sudden, the bull stumbled sideways and fell. He was down in the middle of a huge meadow. The herd stopped and looked back at him, then moved off as Jim approached.
I've always felt that a mature bull caribou is one of the most magnificent animals in the world. And this was the caribou that I had come to Alaska for. He was a real fine animal, and I was very pleased. It turned out that later we had an official score of 371.5, which put him in the record book. It was kind of the first hurdle in my quest for a successful trip.
fishing for silver salmon in the Michigan River was out of sight. Average size, 9 pounds. Largest was 18. As a retriever, Ed's Labrador, Gilly, just didn't know when to quit. They kept a few for food and turned the females loose to continue upriver to spawn. For 4 days, Jim walked and looked for the one moose that would fill his requirements. Finally, he spotted about 6 cows and 2 good bulls in some heavy alders. The smaller of the 2 spotted Jim as he was halfway across the flats. The big one was down in the brush, out of bow shot. The bull finally circled to the left, stopped and looked back at him from about 60 yards. The arrow hit him a little far back, but hard. The bull again made a circle and stopped on the other side of some high, thick brush. Jim moved out a couple of steps and got another angle at the bull as he was facing away. Good. He didn't go very far, about 150 yards.
When I crossed the ridge and saw the moose down, I found it pretty hard to believe. The moose is an unbelievably huge animal. He must have stood close to 7 feet, weighed between 1,500 and 2,000 pounds. I think I was really awestruck. His antlers were better than we had hoped, a 66.5-inch spread. I could put my 60-inch Mercury Hunter inside, plenty of room to spare. As it turned out, he was a record-class animal, had at 203 and 6/8, ranks very high in the Pope and Young records. I was, of course, very happy with my good luck, most of which I can credit to Ed King as a terrific guide and a wonderful companion. I was forever hooked on Alaska. It was really hard to leave. It gets in your blood. But I knew one thing. I was going to go back.